in um, in the past that, especially with people like Mark Polino, that the whole point is imagine somebody's sitting at a table next to you at an event, at one of these events, and they and they're just listening in on your table, and that's what this is about. So we are definitely live now, so thank you everyone who is joining in and or watching this on rewind. So welcome to episode number 16 of the Power Platform Share. Mr. Gomez might be joining in soon. He said he was going to try to pop in and co-host with us, but I have 4 amazing MVPs here. I will introduce them in just a moment. I want to tell you what this is so you know what to expect. The Power Platform Share is started with myself, Mariana Gomez, and Steve Endo, both MVPs, having an email chat with each other about what we were doing in the Power Platform space in regards to our work with Dynamics products. And somehow the conversation moved to Twitter. And I remember Steve Endo saying, hey, I did this. And I said, I want to see that. And some unknown person said, hey, me too. So we're like, well, you know what? Let's do that. So this conversation is about the 5 of us sharing information with each other and allowing you, the user, to watch or to ask questions in the YouTube chat. So we have, as I mentioned, 4 amazing MVPs. I guess I was including myself as an amazing MVP. All in the Business Central space, which is very exciting because today we're going to be talking about the use of Dataverse. And we're going to talk about it specifically with Business Central, but most of what we talk about will extend beyond Business Central to the pure usage of Dataverse. So I'm going to start like a clock, and I'll end with our main guest. But up in the top left on my screen is Kristof Belowas. Do I pronounce your last name right?
No.
I didn't think I did. I should know how to do that. We've been friends a long time.
Krzysztof Białowąs.
Kristof? You know what? We're going to have to phonetically write that down so that I can get it right. Okay, Chris. He is in Poland, so love that. Okay, so thank you for joining us this afternoon. I appreciate that. And you're the amazing host of the monthly webinar for developers for Business Central, which I really have no business joining in on each month, but I do just the same and absolutely love it and learn from you guys. Oh, you people, I'm trying to be more gender neutral. You people regularly. I know guys is gender neutral, but some people don't feel like it is. So I'm trying to get that word out of my vocabulary. Moving to the right is our next guest, also from Europe, Jeremy Viska. Did I get your name right?
Viska.
Viska. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay. And where in, I don't even know I know where you are in Europe.
I am in Gothenburg, Sweden.
Sweden. Oh, wow. You're in the cold territory.
Well, I moved here from Boston in US, and I would say that the weather is nicer.
They do have very cold winters in Boston. I remember I like to sail. My husband and I sail, and we used to sail a lot from in the Northeast because we lived in New York City, and our summer trip was always sailing. And there is a sailboat race from Boston to Nantucket. And It's an annual race. The goal is just to finish, not to win. It's a long race. And the reason that makes it special is there is heavy, heavy fog there on a regular basis. I remember one time we were sailing and the fog was so thick that we couldn't see the front of our boat. And so the race is called Fagawi because the Fagawi race, and when you finish, you get a hat. So that's the prize. And just a hat that says Fagawi. And it basically stands for when you're out there in the fog, we're the Fagawi, right? So think about it. So that's the Fagawi race. I want to race in that sometime. Still a goal of mine, but anyhow. I digress. Sorry about the personal story. Okay, and then my very dear friend, Kristian Hosman. Hello, Kristian, joining us from snowy Colorado.
Correct.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Belinda.
Yeah, thanks. And then finally, wrapping the corner, our guest of honor, and someone who only lives about 2 hours that way, and Miss Mary Thompson. How are you?
I'm well. Hello, hello. Thanks for having me. Excited
Now,
to
you
be here.
you have a whole new venture that you're doing.
I do.
Elevator
I do.
pitch?
I'm sorry?
Give us the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so my elevator pitch is I'm here to help mostly partners, but also here for end users as well. But we are glorifying your already amazing Business Central system by adding in different elements of the Power Platform to automate and integrate your systems to make them work even better than they already are. So yeah, really just automating and integrating Business Central with the rest of the world. So taking my very special knowledge, a lot that I've learned from people on the call as well here, but really taking the uniqueness of what Business Central is. I get a lot of calls that say, Business Central is not like pulling Dataverse. And it is, but it isn't. But it's what I love to do, and I'm really excited to help others. So, yeah.
Totally agree with you. Power Platform, I think, is amazing. And it's interesting, before we get into Dataverse, for the gentlemen, as developers, as pro developers, where do you see the line differentiation? I see it in my head, but where do you see the line differentiation between when you do an extension for pro development or use some other tool versus when you would go the Power Platform route?
For me, I would say the users that I work with will find that Power Platform is a really strong way to get at the systems as they work, as they are. So if you want to get the most out of what you have, Power Platform is a really useful tool in your arsenal to empower you and your organization to work with what you have. And when you start getting into, well, you need something more than what you have today in Business Central, in some new functionality, something specific to your industry, then it makes a little more sense to go, should we have that inside of Business Central with an extension development? So I think it's a cake and frosting sort of approach almost.
Okay, I am totally stealing your answer here, all of it.
Cake is pretty great all by itself.
Not the cake really part, the other part, but yeah. Probably the cake
really
too.
shines with the frosting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that's when I've seen people get the most out of Power Platform is to really get the best out of the things that they have. And it's not necessarily limited to that, because you can have great external pieces like custom tables where you need data that's maybe not part of your financial landscape, but it's important to your operation. I could see organizations having that live in Dataverse as well, rather than need to have a developer make a home for it inside of Business Central. Maybe. Like, for example, if you own buildings and things like that, there isn't necessarily a financial reason you might need to have all of the contact information for the maintenance teams and things like that for those locations. So it makes sense that as a business owner, you might want to have a Dataverse table with all of that information, and you can add to it, adjust it, work with it. You don't need a developer to make sure that works with the rest of your BC infrastructure. That could be a scenario.
I love that.
I hope that helps.
It does. Mary, what are you thinking about that? I see you nodding like crazy.
Yeah, no, I really, like you said, the original part of it is really what I can sentiment with for sure, right? Is the Power Platform is brilliant at helping people do more with something that's already great, right? I love Business Central. I think it's a great product. I'm never going to say that it's not, right? I've got my Microsoft glasses on here. But I love all the more things that we can do when you add the Power Platform into it, right? So it's really maximizing the system for the users with what it can do, and then like adding glitter on it, right? Like you talked about frosting. I'm gonna say we're gonna throw some glitter on it and really make it shine. And the part that I'm really passionate about in that, and that I think is really great, and the biggest like ROI is for the customers, because if you think about who's using Business Central, right? You're talking about SMBs. And now SMBs make up like 96% of the GDP in the US, right? So it's a huge astronomical space and network, and you know what I mean? There's a lot out there. But that can also mean a lot of different things, right? So an SMB can be someone like yours truly, right? Me and my intern, where we're going to take off the world, to bigger companies. I think it's up to like 500 people or something. 500 employees. That's doing. That's a lot of people, right? So and there's a lot to do in between. The companies that are on the larger side, like the above 100 and stuff like that, they're gonna have some money, right? They have more money and more funds, and I really feel like they're more like enterprise type people, despite what statistics say. So I think that being able to give people that are 1, 2, 3-man shows, like historically in an SMB, you're wearing a lot of different hats, and it's how much can I get done in a day. And that is why we need to bring the Power Platform to our small SMB users, right? Because they need the help the most. So we're going to take what the system is already doing. Why? Because it's cheaper, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe those are dirty words, but that's what it comes down to when you're talking about, giving an SMB something to really work with and leverage the most out of what they want to do and what they see their visions are without having to pay for a lot of custom fancy development. They can get a lot done with just a little bit. So yeah, I'm really going off on a tangent here, but I would just really sentiment to what he's saying there. But then when it really needs to do some extra stuff, basically for me, what is the dividing point between the Power Platform and development work? When I can't do it. Mm-hmm. that is then a development piece of work, right? Because I am during the course, and my line is very black and white. Although, is it, right? Because it's funny, the more I delve into it, the more I surprise myself. Like, mm-hmm. If I can't write code, but I can start to read it now. I'm getting fancier with some different things. I understand, a JSON body, I understand webhooks. There's a lot that I know, and one day I'm going to push myself and go and sit down in a coding class, and I'm going to wonder, how much prep do I know or how much don't I know, right? Who knows? But I think it's like this slippery slope. So in that sense, I don't know. But for me right now, the defining point is do I need to call Jeremy, Stefan, or Christoph, right? Because mm-hmm. If I do, then it's pro dev.
Yeah, don't be careful picking the programming class. I made the fatal mistake of saying, I could do a C# class, and much to my surprise, every morning I would start out going, yeah, I got this. And by the end of every day, I was thinking, what the hell was I thinking taking this class? So I could write code in C# very, very poorly. And if I was held at gunpoint, and I would be crying, and it wouldn't be because of the gunpoint, it would be because of C#. So, no, I'm not. I know my space, and I'm happy to stay in it.
Yeah.
Don't worry, AL's not sharp.
Okay. Okay.
I just want to be able to create custom APIs, and that is going to happen.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm going to use Jeremy's, spare brain ideas, custom API braider for sure in the interim, but one day I want to make my own.
Awesome.
There's so much value to both. We should do a stream later on where we go, let's talk about the basics of making a PTE custom API page.
Well, that's because we'd have to say, all right, Mary, say control plus window plus sharp to get your thing and Visual Studio together. So.
Chris, before we take a look at Dataverse and we talk about what it is, Kristian and Christoph, do you guys have anything you want to add to what we've been talking about the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we could just start at the beginning, right? So, like, what is Dataverse first off? And I think Jeremy kind of touched on it in regards to it's some place where you can create tables, you can store data. But, like, where does it live? Like, I look at Jeremy's background, and he's, like, in space. Like, what is Dataverse? Where is it? Is it backed up? Is it easy to access? Do people have to pay for it? Like I have all these questions that I don't know all the answers to, and I don't know that anyone on the call has all the answers to it, but if you had to explain this to someone, how would you explain it?
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, Jeremy.
So one thing to this is that I think in Business Central space, everyone thinks about Dataverse only in regards to connecting to CRM, right? In the past, it was CDS, right? Now they just changed the name, but it's much more in the background, not only connection to CRM, right? And answering your question, Belinda, about when I see it's like I start when I try to do the development, not for the product, but for example for the customer, I can check if I can do it in Power Platform, right? So like Power Automate, like I'm always giving example. It's not always relevant that we can do it with the Power Automate, the FTP connector and getting the files. Right, it's in the past we needed to code it, and I'm always hearing from my friends, developers, that but I have somewhere the code, so it not take me so much time. Okay, but it take me 5 minutes to do it in Power Automate, right, to get it to Business Central. So that we start thinking as a developers that we can use other tools as well, right? So that's for me something which I always try to achieve in the conversation, that we not always need to do the development, right? Because we as developer, we're always thinking, okay, let's do the whole development. And when we think integration with Teams, sending some messages to Teams, the first thing which developers think, okay, let's develop it. But why we can use the Power Automate for it, right? Why we need to write any line of code? So that's where I prefer to use Power Automate in this Power Platform, right? The same with the reports. Like we have Power BI, so let's use it. It's for it. So why we shouldn't use it instead of doing those all reports in Business Central, which is nightmare, always was, right? So, and another part of Power, I today had a conversation with one of the partners, and the customer wants, the simplify interface, right? Which Business Central cannot give if you are using it on phone, tablet. Yes, it's working, it's fully working, everything is fine with it. But there are cases that customer really needs something very simple. Right? They don't need to log in 1,000 places. They don't need to click around, right? So they just need a simple app. Why not use the Power Apps then, right? And this is where I see it, like if we are doing something for specifically for the customer, right? That's the place where we can start with Power Automate, Power Platform. Not always it will be a good choice, because that's also what we should say. Sometimes that can be requirements which we cannot do with the Power Platform, but we need to do the development. But why not start thinking, let's start, if we can do it in Power Platform, then think if we really need a custom development, additional one.
That's a brilliant point you made, because I know enough about software development to know there are some things that become more complex when you're developing your app, like authentication. Who can log in and what can they do? And that's already there. And so let's go to, let me see if I can.
I will just put one more thing is about the resources. We had quite a lot of sometimes discussion about the resources, and I think we have more resources to people which know Power Platform than know Business Central development, right? Mm-hmm. So in some terms, it's better to do it even as a Power Platform, like Power BI report, right?
Right.
And Jeremy we both are dinosaurs in Business Central or NAV development, right? But probably 10 years ago you haven't do anything with Business Central and NAV, but still we are in the same space now doing the same product, but much more people can do it, right? But this is only different tools, but we are still doing the same customers, the same functionalities.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Okay, so I have pulled up, I'm putting you guys on my side so I could see your faces again. All right, let's go in. So one of the things that's interesting, because I want to show it a little bit, Mary, and then I want to talk about how you're using it. So let me get out of that. Just go back to my other. I was in Cloud Week, so that was my trial environment for Cloud Week. So one of the things that I think a lot of people get confused about, especially going back to your question, Kristian, is the fact that to access Dataverse, you have to go into Power Apps. You have to open up Power Apps to get to it. And, whoops, not data flows, tables. Sorry, the Power BI-er in me, you know. Okay, so that's one thing that is definitely a little different. And so this is where you would create your table. You notice I have a couple of BC related items out here. But one of the things I love about it too is when you create a unique table, it could have a lookup to another table as well. And there are already a bunch of tables out there. So it's this, I like to describe it as this free-form database that's in the cloud. I say free-form because you could create what you want to create, but it's kind of got some built-in protection. So if I wanted to create a new table for us now, I could call this the Power Platform Share. That could be the name of the table. And then you make sure you have a primary column name. So we'll put an MVP name. And I'm going to go ahead and just click on create. And that's all it takes to create my table, this new custom table. And there are, even though it looks like there might be only one field in here, it's provisioning it all. Once it gets done, there will be some default tables already set up, like created on date, modified date. Here we go. Who owns it? These are all the table fields that you would normally have to create if you try to do this in SQL. So let me just create one more column, and then Mary, I want to ask you about examples you're using. So we have MVP name, and let's see, I'm going to put award category. And we have two different award categories here. So I could make it text where I type it in, or I could come down and say choice. And when I do a choice, I'm going to add in a new choice. And choice number 1 will be data platform. That's me. And choice number 2 will be business applications. And so this is pretty cool, I think. So that's how easy it is to create the drop-down list. So a lot of the complexity is essentially done for me. I'm going to make that required. And then come in and let's see, go to forms where we can enter in the data. And I do not see all the forms that I want to see. Oh, let me go to data. No data. Go back to forms. And let's go to columns. Yes, I don't have any idea where I'm going. For a time type, I want to, I got to save the table. No wonder. Hello. That's a tricky one you got to remember. Mary's probably laughing at me. That is like a weird gotcha, isn't it?
Well, you don't expect it. I think we get so, privileged with SaaS-based applications where we no longer have to hit the save button. It just magically happens. And
exactly.
So this is trivial save button I must hit to actually, process records. That's
actually, you're absolutely right. I want to make sure I have my new table. So there's forms and views. Views is where you see information, and form is where you can enter it in. So I'm going to just ignore that. Okay, I have the MVP name, but I don't have the, and I have the owner, but I don't have the the award category. So I'm going to add a form field. I'm going to add the award category, and I'm going to.
You're doing this. Now the save button is on top. Save button was on the bottom before. I wasn't even looking down there for that.
I accidentally added created by date, so I'm going to hide that. I know, right? And then I'm going to hide the owner. So now it's just those two things. Save and then publish.
And
Yes.
just one of those little life things that I still chuckle that even with brand new stuff like Power Apps, we still have the floppy as our good old friend, the save icon.
Right? And people don't know what that represents. Yeah. Back up.
It's just this digital icon to them. You know what I mean? Might as well be like McDonald's Golden Arches or something.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's not even the original floppy. So when sys publishes, we can type into it, and then basically we're storing data in it. And quite frankly, if you do it in Teams, it's even faster. There you go. You still have a floppy. How about that? Do you have a floppy drive? No. Did you ever just take it by the metal piece and shake it up and down? So it kind of like the original fidget spinner, right?
Yeah. Although this one specifically is just a coaster, specifically built.
Oh, okay. Well, it's hysterical. Okay,
right.
So let me close that out. So now, if I were to, let me go in and I want to add data. And add a record, and now I should see my form. And so now we have Mary Thompson. And what is her award category? I mean, it's that simple. I mean, we've created something new and powerful. And so just that simple. And now if I were to go and look at my data, I would need to make sure I have the right view to look at it. But forms enter data, and yeah, that's how simple it is. And then you can create relationships between these. And so it's really nice because like right now I'm looking at default, but I could come in and look at all and look at all these tables that get created. Now, a lot of these, to Kristian's point, was CRM related. So like there's an activities table out here somewhere, or the relation of or the relevant activity table. I don't know what it's called. But there's contacts. You could take these and duplicate them, or if you're not using Dynamics 365, you could just take them and use them as they are. So you could use the specific tables that are listed here, the fields that are listed here, or again, make a copy of it and clean it up and add to it if you want and make your own table. So Mary, how are you using
the virtual tables here?
Yeah.
So I want to go through a couple different things, before we go into that, and just kind of highlighting some questions that Kristian had, and maybe for anyone that, is viewing or, rewatches this as far as like Dataverse goes. Now, yes, it is that easy, but two things. If you're logging into your brand new, system and you never set this up before, you are not going to see those things. You're going to have to do just a little bit of thing, right? You can be like, you're going to go to tables and it's going to say you have no environments. Would you like to add a database to your environment? You'll have to click on that. And there'll be ones that are independent. I'm in my screen here, I'm like taking my pointer and I'm like highlighting on like Belinda's screen where she has the environment on like the top right hand corner. But clearly you can't see that that's what I'm doing, but that's what I'm circling, right? So a lot of times when I was like getting started and like testing, I would often wonder where is this thing I've been working on, right? And you go through like small panic attacks and things like that. If that's where you're at, go to your environment. Just change to see. Is it in a different environment? Because you probably just got lost somewhere.
Never use the default. Never use the default like I'm using, because everybody has access to it. This is just my dev environment.
So there could be, I just know that I would often get lost when I was first starting off, right? And I couldn't really tell you why, but I just know like like these were the issues that I had, right? So you will have to create a new one. From a customer perspective, right? Yes, there is a charge on that. What is it? I don't know. Don't know, but there is one. I don't know. That's why I like working with partners. They know those things. I just build it for them. So yeah, so on that perspective, right? And so when it comes to, there's many different, obviously, like we've talked about, CRM ways that we can use, Dataverse. One that's not related to ERP, but just like randomly, I sometimes during lunch I'll work out with my neighbor, and she works for a company, I don't know, they do like medical billing and stuff like that, but it's so ironic because they don't have a platform for a database, right? So I was talking to her about it, and they pay some other company to essentially be their database, right? You guys are all shaking your like, of course, Mary, but you gotta remember I'm new to this stuff. So they pay this other company, and then she has to deal with like these terrible like reports, and then she has to like export everything, and then she's like entering it into Excel and all this stuff, and I'm like, you need a database. And she was like, I know, but we don't have one. I'm like, are you guys using Outlook? Like, do you guys have Office? You guys using Microsoft? And they were. And I'm like, you should be in database, right? But she's like getting ready to leave. She'd already put in like her 2 weeks. So that was like a moot point, right? But for me, like that was the first time in the field, right? All on my own that I could identify you need Dataverse, right? So I think that's a situation that's not CRM based, right? Because it was like all medical coding. I don't even know why they needed it, but for whatever reason, they, systems, things like that. But now, when it comes to ERP based, I guess we could call this ERP based. You guys are going to laugh. This is a really, really rough situation. But I'm kind of a visual person, so I wanted to kind of show this to you. So this is an app. As you can see, there's a couple different reasons why it's not working right now, but I'm going to show it anyways. What I did is I was creating an app. I created this, I think like Scottish Summit last year. I wanted to use Business Central. I did a presentation on using every component of the Power Platform with Business Central, right? Pulling and exporting to kind of, show and get some ideas. So sometimes they're not good at examples, but they're examples. And so this AR notes process came into this. And there is, I thought I opened up another one. Let me pull this here. But what I did is first I started off, see, multiple environments, got to find which one my apps are in. I started off trying to do, this one works there, looks a little bit better, where it actually has the list, right? And so what I'm wanting to do is I pulled the AR receivables list from Business Central, right? That's just a standard API, it's just a standard table that I could use, right, into just a nice normal like gallery, and I come into here and then what they can do here is, right, like whatever their notes are, right? If you ever worked AR, right, you call them, they're like, oh, it checks in the mail, I'll pay it, right? And so you make their little note, whatever check is, mail, I can't type and talk. And so then essentially this would go to SharePoint because Business Central, right, lacks a good ability to kind of have AR functionality. Now, it's a bad example because there's plenty of people that like there's way better solutions. Like I'm not saying this is a good solution. It was just a demo, right? So anyway, so needless to say, I was like, well, that doesn't, as I was diving in deeper, and I'm like, but I don't really like that because this is just a balance. What if they're asking me about like different invoices? I want to be like really specific, right? And so then what I wanted to do is to come into here and add another gallery and filter that gallery to actually only show the invoices for the School of Fine Art, right? Mm-hmm. So it would only show those. But I kept getting this error, and I want to say it was like a delegation error. Yeah, people are shaking their heads. That must be what it is, right?
Yeah.
And so basically what I I can gather that I think a delegation error is, right, is basically because I was pulling from this table. It's an API, so it's more of what I would kind of call like live data, right? And then there's going to be like a cap on it. And so it couldn't just like filter. It was like, you're making me think in ways I don't know how to think because there's too much to think about. And this is why I cover entry level stuff, y'all. But basically that is my concept of like a delegation error. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to pause for a second and ask, Christoph or Jeremy to either confirm or deny, maybe truly, what is a delegation error, and is my simplistic view anywhere on target there?
I'm not Christoph or Jeremy, but they're both looking a little bit perplexed. So, I'm going to, and I'm looking at, so there are different data sources. Some data sources have the ability to be delegable, meaning that you could push off some of the processing back to the data, the original data source, where others do not. And some that do not, I believe SharePoint is definitely one of those. And so, out of the box, Power Apps limits you to 500 records in a non-delegable situation. You could up it to 2,000 if you want. So if you know you're going to have less than 2,000, you could then ignore the warning message that you would get from it, and that would be okay. You wouldn't want to do any more than that because it's going to go crazy. It's going to take a long time and be very sluggish. So this is a perfect situation of where the line gets very murky and gray between pro development and Power Platform development. There's definitely a lot of things that you could do. So, I mean, if someone was wanting a full-blown collection app, that probably would be better served in an environment. But if they're just wanting a place to track notes when they talk to people about specific items, then this is a good place to go. I wouldn't use SharePoint. I would use Dataverse, or maybe even data lakes or SQL, Azure SQL. Those get a little more pricier than Dataverse, I feel like, but that's something I would definitely do. So.
Yeah. So what I did, right, because again, it was just like this demo, me pretending and like looking at like what to do type of situation. All I knew is that like I was stuck on this delegation error for quite some time. Even trying to pull it into a collection, right? Because then I would Google and try to research like what do I do with this? How do I get around this delegation error? Mm-hmm. And then sometimes it was like a collection, but for whatever reason, I don't think that you could collect the data because of it coming from Business Central. I don't remember all the specifics. All I know is like it just wasn't jiving, right? So then I had to put my little wish list away for a little bit, right? But then in came virtual tables, Business Central virtual tables, right? And so what this does is allows you to point V2 APIs, right? Your standard tables, and from Business Central into a Dataverse shell. And then if you are working with Power Automate, for example, if you go into the configuration, so you should go to the BC Mix It Up mixer that Belinda was talking about, because people do have a little bit of a difficult time getting this set up. So once you get it set up, right, then what you can do is you can say, okay, go pretend like you're a Dataverse table in Power Automate, right? And so then you use the Dataverse connectors. And this was particularly mind-blowing to me December of last year. So a little over a year ago.
I love how specific you are with that. December of last year.
I mean, I don't know, December of 2021 then to 2020? I guess it was December of 2020, y'all. Could that be? I don't know. This is why I say last year. I I sounded better when I said December last year. So, needless to say, it was about a year ago, okay? And where the Power Platform, the Business Central Power Platform connector was over a year ago is not where it is today, right? It has grown up a lot in a short amount of time. So particularly at this point in time, this was really, really exciting because if you go and you look at the triggers and actions that are available for Dataverse compared to the Business Central connector, there's, I don't know, like 15 more or something I counted one time, right? But so that's really cool, right? So then that allows you to build like these tables into here. And then I guess, because it's in a table, instead of this virtual, or instead of the API table that I was trying to pull for before, right? Long story short, is when I came into my ugly little Power app down here, what you can't tell, but what I ended up doing here, so this is, it doesn't like it because I had a trial version of Business Central, right? It was a demo, so I had this hooked to a trial version, and this was from like over a year ago. So now all of this is here, but it's like we don't have a data source because your Business Central environment expired. So that's what we see here. But what I was able to do then here is what this is this table is actually, oh look, it kind of allows you to see this here. And it may be able to go in here and see this, right? What I did is I took this table from Business Central, the sales invoice table from Business Central. I sent it to Dataverse, right? I hooked up my virtual tables and I hooked that up. So then now what I did is I built like this shell of a table in Dataverse and said, okay, populate it with this Business Central data, right, instead. And so that's what I did here. And then I no longer got this lovely delegation error. I was then able to continue on with my nice like little demo, and I was really happy and fancy, kind of showing that and how that worked when it had data.
So I have a question for you, Mary, and this is something I would also like the pro developers to weigh in on. So when you're bringing data in from BC into Dataverse, I feel like I don't necessarily want it to be a one-for-one relationship to table. I don't want to be duplicating the table. I'd rather kind of create my own view where I'm bringing in the table already joined together and something that's unique so that I'm not dealing with the constraints of the way the table's laid out in Business Central. Instead, I have it laid out in a method that's easier for me to do predominantly Power BI reporting on. Does that make sense? So
yes.
rather than going to like the value entries table and trying to extract things out of that particular monster, I would rather have it pulled, just if I'm wanting to deal with just the PO side, have it automatically connected to a few vendor or to a few fields that are only in like the vendor card and not in the value entry table, so that it's unique in reporting.
So what you would do in that situation, you would either create a custom API, or again, you would use Jeremy's fancy API Braider to create a custom API as like a maker, right? Publish that extension, publish that API in Business Central, right? And you're going to still do the same thing. Then bring that table, sorry, I just like hit my mic. Then bring that table into Dataverse like that. So like you said, same concept, but now you have it nice and super like cleaned up in that approach.
I have to stop in a pause for Jeremy's Data Braider. That is a stinking awesome product. It is so cool. Yes.
He pays me every time I say it. No, I'm just kidding. It is that amazing. It's just really, really great. I'm really appreciative of it, and you have no idea the number of questions and times and work that Jeremy and I have done together around custom, APIs on several different things. So sometimes I feel like he's like, here, please stop bothering me.
I was actually trying while we were talking to see if I could build a Power App, how long it would take me to build against an endpoint in that, and I was disappointed because Power Apps won't let me hit up an API directly. I have to have, because it's not cloud-based BC that I was using to test against. I was like, oh. So I'll spin up a cloud one and find out the answer to that question, because I'm sitting here going, I could put that AR data together in a real easy one-call function.
Well, and I asked that because that's something I'm trying to, and I think for Power BI specifically, I'm trying to think in terms of, and I don't remember which of my Power BI friends said it, so I'm going to give credit to both of them, Daniel Messier and Donald Parrish. They're amazing end users of Power BI, and I hang out with them every week. And one of them said to me that we have to think, when it comes to data structure like that, we have to think about data set up for reporting and not database. And they could be very different as far as the functionality goes. And one of the things I noticed in BC, I think it's a really cool product, but sometimes even the relationships that are meant to work out of the box can be very strained and slow. And I think it has to do with volumes of data and or the way it's laid out. I'm not sure. Sometimes when you're connecting like some sales information to the value entry table, or if you're trying to use the link to get from value entry to the general ledger entry using that link, that really is like a very, very slow process. That's another great example of where I'd like to see maybe that data brought into Dataverse, because I think using the relationship in Dataverse would be significantly faster. I don't know. I want to test that out sometime, but that was why I asked that.
So then again, in that situation, two things that I would add to that, right? One is, are you using the Business Central Power BI APIs?
I'm trying to use their new APIs, yes. You're right.
Because I wonder if that would...
Everything in web service is like, I try to discourage the use of web service. I'd rather take the link in the web service window and use that as like OData or just a web feed, as opposed to
the web service.
A web service, yeah. I stay out of the web service.
Okay. Because I know that was a common problem, right? So that was why they came up with these Business Central Power BI, APIs specifically to really help with that reporting. And I guess the second thing, I don't know if it's a question or a comment, right? But it's more of like the statement of, just because we can doesn't mean we should, right? And so I say that because I'm sitting here telling you, oh, you could do this, you could do this. I don't really know why and when. I don't know that part of the virtual tables. I'm just gonna be really honest, or like we said, kind of in like some of the similarities. I can get you there. If somebody tells me, yep, these are requirements, cool, I'll take you there. But I'm still learning on all of the different use cases and situations on like why people are deciding, to make sometimes those decisions to go there outside of CRM, right? Again, for us, and I think maybe this would be a really awesome conversation to have with somebody that's like super power platform. You know what I mean? Like that's all they do. Please, you know what I mean? Because us ERP people, I mean, we'll help you figure out your books real quick, right? Like we'll just have like a little tradesy. We know a lot of like secrets and tricks that like y'all don't know about like ERP stuff, and you can share some of like these wonderful like knowledge of like why would people be doing this, right? Because that's what I find a lot of times, and these are like conversations I have with people like, I don't know Power Automate, or I don't know Business Central, and I'm like, that's okay. I'll do the translation. You tell me what you know. Like, if it didn't have anything, like Stefan Brown, I often have this conversation with him. He's like, I don't know Power Automate. I'm like, I don't need you to. How would you do it in the development world? Because then that's how I honestly will figure out how to translate that a lot of times. So, same concept, right? like I would like to understand, because there are regular things in other places, right? When I say regular things, like they were in Dataverse first or something, right? But like somebody should be able to, I think, tell us or help us understand, like, what are non-ERP use cases of virtual tables, and I bet we'll be able to figure out.
Well, actually, I've used one with a BC customer. It was someone who, and I wish I could show you I should have made a copy of it so I could show it without revealing any of their steps. But there was someone who wanted to be able to track certain steps that occurred when an inventory item was created in BC. So the theory was whoever keyed in the inventory item would go ahead and block it right away. And so I have this series of events that happen. There are there's 3 Power Automates flows, and it includes Dataverse tables. So what happens, just using the very simple, it takes 3 seconds to build a new item gets added into inventory. It's going to create a record in a table. And the record in a table, let me see if I could show some of it, I think. Let me try and show some of it. So let me go ahead and go back this way. Okay, so here in my table, what happens is when somebody first enters in let me go to solutions. When somebody first enters in a flow, and what happens is, and I should have loaded flow right away. Sorry, wasn't really. Flow, where are you? Very simple Power Automate. When somebody keys it in, it creates this record. And let me come into flow this way. Yeah, new item gets added into Dataverse. That's basically all this is, right? So very simple. When a record gets created, for items, then it basically will pull the record information out, because it doesn't always do that, right? So sometimes when the trigger doesn't always bring in all the details. So I get the item with the row ID. And then in my Dataverse, I create a new role in the table I have called BC New Item Rollouts. And so what this does is it gets the item number and the item description, and it assigns it as step number 1. And the completion status is set to 0. And then I have an index that is a concatenation of, let me hover over again. There we go. Which is the item number and the step. And so that's what ends up getting created. So if I were to go back to, let me go into BC and key in a new item number. This is just a standard one. So I am updating a table though. So I'm going to come in and just add a new item. And this is about all the functionality I have. This is why I like hanging out with the guys on the Power Platform Share. Because even though they know more than I do when it comes to functionality, I do know the database a fair amount. Okay, so here's the ticket for the Power Platform Share saved. That's now added. So if I were to come back into my table, BC New Item Rollout, I'm going to click on that. I should have any moment now. And if I come in and I want to just look at data. And any minute now. So this
actually gives me an idea for something. So I'm glad that we do these.
Yeah. Okay, so it should have this new item. Here it is, Power Platform Share. And this is the step number 1. So what is going to happen now if I were to come in and open up Outlook as well? The first person who, let's see. There we go. Let's do it this way. Okay, so it's using the In this case, I'm using the email with options step. That ends up happening. I'll show you the flow that does this. And it's telling me, okay, this is the first step that's been assigned. Do I want to start it and complete it? Because what actually also happened was, if I go into my solution over here, actually I'd probably get the solution right here. A little bit easier. What it's done now in my BC solution is it is, because there was a new item added into my data table, this BC new item rollout, it has launched another flow. And I'm going to come in and open up this flow. And this one is actually looking at the table in Dataverse that got added to. And so this one is saying, hey, when a new item gets added here, and let's see, nothing special there. Then it's going to come in and run this step. And it says, if the step is number 1, remember I assigned that 1. If it is, then it's going to go through and update the steps, right? So it's going to go through and update and add new items. And what it's doing is it's actually getting information from a template, this list of templates. And then if it's not, it's also going to go through and run with this template. So let me show you what that means and what it does. Okay, so what happened when I did that, if I come back in and refresh, I should see, okay, let me come to my email. I'm going to say, yep, that step has been completed because it started more steps. And I'm going to confirm that response. Only because it's running parallel. Okay, so if I come back into my Power Platform and refresh my data, now you could see for the Power Platform share, look at all of the steps I have. Because the first one, what happened was initially when it was step 1, it took that step 1 and marked it as, here we go, marked it as complete. And so then it ran through and said, okay, that was step 1. For everything that has a prerequisite of step 1, add those new steps in. So it added the new steps in. So let's go take a look at the template table that I used for that. So if I come in here and I look at my data, these are the steps. So here are the, I'm going to shrink that up. Here are the steps that are being used, and here are the responsible party and associates. And so all they have to do for any future steps is just monitor it and name it. So you have each of these step numbers, and then you have this prerequisite of them. And so you could hear, I'm getting emails like crazy, pretending these are assigned to different people. Hey, did you do your step? Did you do your step? Did you do your step? And so every time it comes through and says, okay, I just completed step 300. So what are all the ones that have prerequisite for 300? And now it's going to add these two to my list as well. So I have 2 tables basically, one that's just a template and one that keeps track of all the individual steps. Then they have, there's a third flow that runs every week to say, did any of these steps time out? Meaning, did 30 days happen? Or did someone come in on one of their answer and write halt workflow? And so if I come through and I mark, this is step number 800. So I'm going to mark this as complete. And I could enter in a comment as well. This is using the approvals inside of Power Automate. Then if I come back in, eventually in this rollout table, which is where all my items are, eventually that one's going to be marked as complete and moved to history. And now I'm going to have new ones get added. And so this is one way I've done it. This is something very simple. So the beauty in this lies in the template table, because if you want to make a change to how it works, all you have to do is come in and update the data in the template table. And then, maybe a different person gets responsible. Then from that point forward, anything that gets attached would be updated as well. And so this is one of the use cases I have for something that is somewhere between simple and complex. But the beauty of it is it's literally done with 2 tables, 3 flows. This one isn't the completed one, so I don't have the final flow in here, and some approvals, and that's it.
How long would it take? How long did it take you, or how long if you had to recreate it? Right. I know that sometimes, like when you do something the first time, it's obviously going to take you like a little bit more, especially as we're growing, right? You know what I mean? But it's that next time that really counts, right?
Yes.
So that's what I'm always kind of, looking at too when we're looking at that, you know what I mean, development versus Power Automate. So how long would you say?
Yeah, you're right, because I tried a couple different iterations of it first. I tried like parent-child, thinking that would work, and the thought of individual flows and managing that on an ongoing basis would have been a nightmare, because you would have had a flow for every step, and you would have to, what a difficult thing to keep triggering that. If I had to recreate this now, it would probably take me an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I think is pretty cool, right? Because then I guess I wonder, and it's not a challenge either, right? It is looking at things and saying, I think, where are Business Central developers' time best used? You know what I mean? And things. Because it's like, well, clearly that can be done in a pro dev, you know what I mean, situation. But I guess my question would also be, how long would that take in a pro dev situation? I don't know. I'm not pro dev. Like,
if you had to guess, Christoph or Jeremy, what would you guess?
If you were going to do it that way, you know what I mean? And that's just because that's how, like, the system. It's not like a challenge or anything against anyone's, like, or, like, how clever.
I love it, Mary. It's us versus them. Go ahead, guys. Show us.
Well, I mean, if you wanted it just done, probably an hour or 2. If you wanted it done well, that a client could support it, it would be documented, there'd be good testing, and done correctly, probably a few days.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think, I think that's kind of an interesting situation to say, right? So let's say you were working on a project, right? Let's say we've got a big project going on. They want a whole bunch of stuff. They need this, kind of inventory, aspect of it over here. But there's some other stuff where they've got like all of these like, crazy reports, or maybe they need some extra, additional functionality, and they wanted to do like somersaults after all of this, whatever, right? So there's a lot of work to do. Are you going to slam your Business Central developer, where we've already talked about how many Business Central developers do we have? Not that many compared to how many makers we can make, right? Like we can put those in there quicker. So it's like, okay, so then if I'm, there, I'm going to put my developers, right, on the stuff that can't be done in Power Platform. There's still plenty of work. There's going to continue to be, plenty of work around there for that. So I think that's kind of an interesting say, well, you use that and then do the other stuff. Then I think the more makers that you enable, right, that eventually, depending on, not everyone's going to make it to the pro dev team, but I bet you're going to find a lot more. You know what I mean? Like it'll be that transition would be easier compared to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for something like this, if you have something that keeps changing, like steps, do you really want to keep pinging the developer to go in and say, oh, we, or maybe, can you help us edit this, or maybe that's more tables you have to do. I don't know. That's a thought. This has all been very fascinating. We are at the top of our hour, so we should wrap it up. I really appreciate the input from the 4 of you. I think you guys have amazing minds, and I love hanging out with each and every one of you. I think you're cool people besides being smart. So thanks for that. So yeah, we are going to, I'll put in the chat, there is a meetup group that I'm involved with, Power Platform Mix It Up, and it's just a community event. It is hosted by one training partner, but its purpose is for anybody in the community, and it's focused around Power Platform and Business Central, but I really wanted to talk about Dataverse because, like Mary, all of a sudden, I have to admit, when they first came out with it, it was called Common Data Model. I was pretty snarky about it. I thought it was a bit ridiculous. And over the last couple of months, a couple months ago, actually it was longer than that, it was about a year ago, more when I started playing with the Power Apps inside of Teams, I started saying, okay, I need to open my mind to Dataverse a little more. And the more I looked at it, the more I fell in love with it. And so it's perfect for someone like me who could create a database from scratch in SQL, but I wouldn't have any fingernails left if I did. So yeah, it's perfect for someone like me. So thank you guys so much. Any closing words, anyone, before we call it a day?
Go to DynamicsCon next week.
Yeah.
Have all the fun.
Yeah, I have an intro to Power BI session. It's on the GP track, but it's pretty agnostic as far as product goes. Mary, what is your session on?
Mine is on the HTTP connector tips and tricks on
Ooh.
the Power Platform.
I will be there. Jeremy, do you have a session?
I have a couple, actually.
You do?
As an odd little quirk of things.
Yeah.
I have the speaker session where I'm talking about the road to BC development, which is going to be controversial because I don't talk about the AL language and the code, but also more focus on all the infrastructure around all the things that developers have to know to get the job done. I have also a session later in the week that is for my company, since we are a platinum sponsor this year.
Oh.
I too have a platinum.
Bravo to you too. Thank you both for
Figured I'd hang in there with you, Jeremy.
thank you both for making it possible. Christoph, do you have a session?
No.
You didn't submit, did you?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I knew if you submitted there would be one, so absolutely. Okay, Kristian, I know you have one too.
Yeah, mine is the first day, kind of midday, and it's implementing Business Central tips and best practices.
That is a good one because as I'm learning more and more Business Central, Jeremy's book, he has a book out too for anyone. It has been super helpful for me, but there are some things because it's really kind of, I don't know, the way it's laid out, I don't know if it's because it's so international, but some things just are very odd to me in my experience with other ERP systems. So it's not wrong, just odd, and it just takes a little bit of a hurdle to learn it. But there are some serious mind-blowing things in Business Central, so it's worth those hurdles, totally worth those hurdles. The benefit far outweighs that little bit of work. So yeah, DynamicsCon next week. So thanks everybody, I appreciate it, and we'll see you on episode 17, so keep your eye out for it. Bye everyone.
Thanks.